Welcome to another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. My name is Molly McGrath, and I am the founder of this revolutionary office altering podcast. You can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. So we're going to dive right in here. Today's guest, I'm really excited about talking with Tom Spiggle of Spiggle Law Firm. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Molly. Thrilled to be on.
Yes. So I'm excited for you to talk to us about your process of writing a book. Your book title it's gorgeous. The cover is absolutely beautiful, and then the title, "You're Pregnant, You're Fired." I love that title.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. And just really speaking into one of your niche area, specific practice areas of fighting pregnancy discrimination in the workplace was the catalyst for writing your book and getting this message out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as a trial lawyer and a former federal prosecutor, I just love your stand for mothers, fathers, caregivers facing caregiving and or pregnancy discrimination in the workplace. And I'd love for you to speak to us a little bit about the process of writing this book. And before we get into that, talk to us a little bit about how this has supported you with educating your clients and attracting clients to come into your office prior to you meeting with them.
Well, it's been absolutely a game changer in terms of being able to communicate with my clients and just attract people to the firm. Being a recognized, well, two things, being a recognized expert in that area. And then, of course, as somebody said to me, which has certainly turned out to be true, like a book is the ultimate calling card, right? I mean, if somebody comes to your office or you're talking to a referral source and you can say, hey, I've published this book. It carries a lot more heft than just leaving a business card.
Yeah. And I've written a couple of books, and it's great to be able to point people. I love that terminology of the ultimate calling card, but I think it's like a walking workshop or podcast, or any kind of medium that you can give to the clients to reference before coming in, that makes your job so much easier of being able to connect with them, figuring out what wakes them up at 2:00 in the morning, figuring out their goals or visions, et cetera, versus showing up like a lawyer and getting too much into the legalese. It really does a lot of the groundwork for you and for the client in respect for their time when they come in and meet with you, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then, you can bootstrap it, right? I mean, you can, when they're either prospective client or even after they become a client, I have chapters in my book that, about just that aren't even just specific to pregnancy discrimination, but are about how the legal process functions, about, mediation. And so I'm able to take those chapters and, when those are coming up, our clients facing one of those issues, I'm able to say, hey, here's a printout of chapter 4, read this. This will give you a good overview, and then we can talk some more. So it's a good way, if you find yourself in your practice, repeating the same, as most people do when you're an expert in something, repeating some of the same fundamentals over and over. It's a good way to shortcut that. And then, of course, for the client also, I think most people learn in a number of different ways, and sometimes it helps to both hear it and read it. So it's good, and it's certainly fantastic in that way too.
I love that. Even just breaking out the chapters and pointing them. I think you said to me before we started recording today that from your perspective, you feel like if you would have done it over again, you felt like your book was a little too long for your liking.
I think that's right. I think, there's a happy medium between what I think are some of the really short, very short books. There are a bunch of services where you dictate into a phone and then their book is produced for you, which I think also have value. I think there's absolutely a place for those. I don't mean to say that there isn't. I think there is. I have a medium between that and then my book was 200 and some pages. I think, I could have cut that down. I mean, most people who have if you were using it for your clients, as I was, and for referral sources, they just don't need that much content to address the issue. So I think, and there's no one obviously right answer, but I think, in my mind, like right around 100 pages, something that somebody could read that's dense enough that gives them some good information, but they can read it fairly easily in a sitting or two, I think is the sweet spot.
Mm. Yeah, so often, I mean, I hear from attorneys when I go through either their strategic marketing plans or their long-term power projects they have. I would say 9 out of 10 attorneys that I speak with say that big goal that they have is writing a book. And it, as you and I were speaking about prior to recording today, that is no small feat, and there is a methodical process for that. And I really love your story because your story is one, as people will say all the time, well, if you write a book, your ultimate goal shouldn't be for it to, make you rich and you're sitting on the beach just collecting millions and billions of dollars all day. That shouldn't be ultimately your goal. But I see so often when people write books, and myself included, through the process, going through many publishers, many editors, many cover art, PR people that either didn't perform or the process just got exhausted through, and it's an exhausting emotional process. And your story, Tom, is one of victory and success, and I would love for you to speak about what you believe going through the process, what really made it a success around the accountability and the coaching in the long game. Because I think you said to me, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And sometimes part of it wasn't even, you didn't see the fruits of your labor for, a year or so after, right?
No, absolutely. And yeah, I started the book. I was working with a coach, Lee Rosen, at the time, fantastic coach. And it was, he recommended, he said, you want to be an expert, you want to build this niche, you should write a book. And, it was really I don't know that I would have done it because it is daunting, to sit down and do it. And there's always a bright, shiny object, there's whatever it is, there's Twitter or Facebook Live, or which at the time I didn't have. I wrote it in 2013, or pay-per-click. I mean, there's always kind of marketing rabbit holes, which all can be very productive. I don't mean to badmouth any of those channels, but the important thing is to stick with something long enough that it can bear some fruit. But in any event, I was working with him, and he kept at me to actually get started writing the book. And it was one of those things where I got far enough along in it that I'm like, well, I might as well finish it, right? Like I had put one foot in front of the other, and that's what I would say to somebody writing a book. Yeah, I mean, it's a substantial process, but what's the saying? How do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. Like, just sit down and start. Like, don't even worry about making it perfect. Don't worry about making the Pulitzer Prize winning prose in it. I mean, if you're an attorney and you're writing in a book as an expert, and another thing I would say is don't go down a rabbit hole of research either. I mean, there are a bunch of different ways to write a book, obviously, but mine was geared towards, the people that would be coming into my office, that were coming into my office, that I was seeing every day, and what I wanted them to know, what I wanted to say to them. So I didn't need to sit down and research, or do the latest, the top 5 cases from every circuit court, in the nation. I didn't need to write, big footnotes. This wasn't for a law review article. This is for people with a discrete problem that needed some help, that needed an expert to kind of walk them through it. So that's how I did it. And I took some existing content that I had. And that's another thing too. I think when you're producing any kind of content, you don't have to be so precious about it, right? Like, I mean, and don't worry about repeating yourself. Nobody's going to go through your book and say, aha, which of these are your blog posts that you wrote, 2 years ago or whenever it was. I mean, you hope nobody's paying that much attention to you. So, use the stuff that you already had. So I took, I've been blogging for a number of years at that point. So I took a lot of that content. I strung it together, and then I spent the next 6 months writing the second half of the book. And then I took the second half of that book and I turned them into blog posts. Like, I just, I bootstrap. And then and I think you and I were talking, before we started, like, just getting to I thought once I had, put the last period on the last sentence, I was done. But Molly, having done this, but I didn't at the time, there's a whole lot to be done from the time that you finish writing the text to getting it published. And I used a platform then called CreateSpace, which is now Kindle Books. I actually hired somebody to do the cover, but CreateSpace helped me, figure out the font and the size of the book. But there was a lot of back and forth and getting proofreaders and all of that to get it done. And then, I absolutely, I think, once you write a book, and so then, I wrote the book. I hired a PR person. That was another good piece of advice that Lee gave me. It's one thing to write the book. It's another to get people to pay attention to it. So I hired a PR person to help get it in front of reporters before we even published it, so we could get some blurbs on the back of it. And then once it was out, then she helped me get it out there. She helped me get it in front of reporters who were writing on the subject, because it's, writing. There are a lot of people writing books, and if you just write it and put it out there, that may not be enough. So getting in front of reporters was key. And then it was probably at least a year before it really started to, I started to see some results. And I think if I had known that at the time, I don't know if I would have been disappointed in it, but I would have thought like, hey, I've written this book, now the floodgates are going to open. And there were some immediate results, but it probably took about a year before it really started to catch hold. And then it was probably 2 or 3 years after that before, we really started to get the snowball rolling downhill effect, where I started to, it just sort of had penetrated the market there for that subject. And I was getting calls by reporters. I was getting asked to be on CLEs, which has continued to this day. It really has been, the cornerstone for my practice.
Wow. So many nuggets there. What I'm taking away, one of the greatest things I love that you said was you're not writing a law review article. And I think that for our attorney listeners will be the grandest nugget, because so often your mind, your intellect goes there. And the distinction between know your audience and you're writing it for your clients, you are not writing it for the bar association, you are not writing it for other attorneys, is critical during that process, because it cuts down. You don't need to research. I love that you said that. Number 2 was do not be afraid to repurpose your content and go back to your blogs and to repeat yourself. There's a study from 1823, marketing and advertising study said that it's not until touch number 12. You can say the same thing 12 different times, and it's not till the 12th time that somebody hears it or sees it that it actually resonates with them to say, hey, I've heard this somewhere before. I really should pay attention to this. And I love that statement right there of make it easier on yourself and go back and use your prior content that you have put out there, your blogs, et cetera, and be able to springboard off of that, because that would give you the opportunity to incorporate more stories. You might have wrote that blog 2 years ago, but I would venture to guess that you've had 2, 5, 10 cases that can speak into that you can incorporate the stories and the metaphors and the things of that nature, which really make for a very exciting, robust book, especially in the space of law.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think I told you when I sat down to write it, I really just, I knew the subject pretty well already, so I didn't have to do a ton of research, but one of the reasons I didn't have to do a bunch of, reading of cases and those sorts of things is, I wrote it as if one of my potential clients was sitting in front of me, what I would want them to know if I had all the time, in the world to explain to them, how this works and what they need to know. And so I wrote it in that way, which really, I found you got a lot more to say than you think you do, right? You sit down at that keyboard and you're like, okay, I need to, as if I'm speaking to someone, write this out and explain the process to them and what they need to know. And then, as you say, speak to their pain points and what they may be feeling. You can produce a lot more content than you think. you know a lot more than you think when you sit down at that keyboard and start to try to walk somebody through what you know.
And then talk to us a little bit about your process. You shared that with me prior to us recording of spending time in the evenings after you spent time with your family, got home from the office and sat down and just chipped away at it. And, my version of it of one small step at a time versus feeling like you need to go away for weeks on end in a cabin in the woods and write a book from start to finish in one sitting. Talk to us a little bit about the process at work for you.
Yeah, it was exactly that. I mean, I had approximately half of the book already. I mean, like I said, I took, all the blog posts and kind of put them together, which was nice because it gave me a good push. I'm like, oh, okay, I've got a good bit here already. But then, I just, every night once the kids were in bed, and sometimes when, my wife and I were, sitting on the couch watching TV, I'm pecking away at my computer and just every night, just as you said, chipping away at it. And I just wrote. I didn't worry about chapters. I didn't worry about narrative. I didn't worry about, because I knew if I did, I would never get it done. I'm like, okay, I just need to get this out there. And again, in this kind of conversational tone, as if I'm speaking to a client. And so, every night or not every night, but when, a lot, routinely I would just sit down and then I would just pick up the conversation where I left off. And I'd, look back and I'd be like, okay, this is where we left off. Now let's talk about what this will look like if we have to go file at the EEOC or whatever it may be. And I just wrote until it's kind of like the movie Forrest Gump when he's running, and at one point he's like, okay, I'm done. I've finished. And at some point I just got to that point where I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm done. There's more I could say, but this is good. I've finished. And then I just took all of that, and there was still work to be done. But at that point I had such a head of steam behind me. It was going to get done at that point. It was going to get finished because I had all this text. I looked back on it and I'm like, okay, this may not be Shakespeare, but it's pretty good. I feel like these are things that I would want my potential clients to know. And then I was able to, to go from there and, to hire proofreaders and to, hire editors. And I'm not talking a tremendous amount of money, but, to give all this to somebody and say, okay, help me break this down into chapters and then start that process.
Yeah, well, I love that. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice that my editor had told me. You're not writing award-winning content. That's not the end game here. It's really to get a message that'll resonate with your clients. And I love that piece of advice, Tom, that you leave for our listeners. Of it kind of gives you permission to not worry about the end product, so to speak. Get your heart and soul out on paper. Speak into what you want your clients to know. I had this visual as you were sharing your story of almost like your client intake process or your get to know you meeting or your vision meeting that you have with the client, that initial meeting with them where you sit down and really speak to them and figure out what's in their head, what's on their heart. And as you were sharing your initial process of just getting that on paper, I had the visual of interacting with it, like what you want your clients to know when you're delivering a workshop or you're delivering a message to them, or you're sitting with them in the conference room, to your point, where you are saying the same thing over and over again, gives you that permission to kind of have fun with it and not be so white knuckling of it that it has to be like just this beautiful award-winning piece of art. Right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think and also remembering what people, what your clients don't know, right? Like things that are easy to you are not easy to other people because they haven't been doing it for months and months and years and years. And so just don't assume that people know anything about the process. And so when I was writing the book, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pretend like I'm speaking to somebody who's fairly well educated, because that's my client base, but they don't know anything about the subject. And so, for instance, like in my practice area, one of the things that we have to do in pursuing a case is file with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Well, educated people are educated in their own way, and they've got their own lives. A lot of them don't even know that the EEOC exists. Like, they don't even know what the acronym means. And that doesn't mean they're not smart people. It just means that they don't know the basic things that I know, just like I probably don't know. I'm sure I don't know the basic things that they do know about their profession. And so being able, and when you would take that perspective, you realize you have a lot to say, because people don't know those things. If you can be like, okay, let me break this down to you. This is being a little bit facetious, but not completely so. Like, how do you get to the courthouse, right? There's a different state and federal court. Where do you find the state court? If you're, just basic things that people don't know. If it's crowded at the front of the line, there's a door on the side. All the inside knowledge that you probably take for granted that you have. That if you actually sat down and started to kind of spell it out for people, a lot.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say in closing, what would you say are the strong tips that you would leave, the value bombs for our attorneys that are interested in writing a book? One thing I heard from you is absolutely hiring a coach. There's something to be said about writing a check for someone to hold you accountable and navigate you through that process. So you have a coaching call and you say, okay, I'm going to write for, every day, or get one chapter down or what have you. And it's almost like you're not going to show up without your homework done, right?
No, absolutely. I just would not have done it were it not for Lee Rosen and having a coach to be held accountable. I'm a pretty diligent person, but it was enough of an undertaking that I needed somebody to, really get kind of the ball rolling. I would say that. And then I would say the other piece of advice I'd say is you almost can't be too narrow in the area that you pick. And that doesn't mean, I think a lot of people, including me when I started this, that doesn't mean that you won't take clients in other areas, right? People will, the advice I got was turned out to be true. If you're seen as an authority on something, people will contact you for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with the thing that you were an authority on. And so in writing a book, pick, like obviously you're pregnant, you're fired. Well, a good bit of our practice is pregnancy discrimination and caregiver discrimination, but by no means all of it. We still do sexual harassment. We still do other kinds of discrimination. We still do, wrongful termination. We still do all those areas of practice. But in the book, I wasn't writing to that audience. So I would say, pick the coach, and then don't worry about picking something. You're not talking to a room full of people. You're talking to one person. So pick that one person that you want to be talking to and what you want to be talking to them about, and don't worry about, this is going to be so narrow that nobody's going to read it. I'm not getting any clients in the other area, because you will. Like, I don't care how narrow the topic is. What you're looking for is something that, of course, you're passionate about, but also that allows you to break through the marketing fuzz to get people to pay attention to you. Because once they pay attention to you, they'll come to you for all kinds of reasons.
Love that. And talk to us a little bit about, you had mentioned another tip. What would you say in regards to the gift that keeps on giving? So you're published, you have it all done, you've written the book, you go through a couple of versions, you get the first version, second version, et cetera. So beginning with the end in the mind, you have your book and you don't see all the fruits of your labor. You don't have the wild success 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. What would you say in regards to sticking with it for the long haul? Because I see attorneys so often they'll invest in time, energy, resources into a project such as writing a book. And then if they don't get immediate gratification in regards to that, or their expectations around it were not met, then they just give up and chalk it up as a miserable failure.
Right. No, I think that's exactly right. It takes a while for the book to marinate, and I get it. Having put all the work into the book and you put it out there, all this fanfare, I think we all, or at least I did, certainly you're expecting some sort of immediate results, and you will get some results like right out of the gate. There's no question about that. But it is a maturing process. I would just say, just think about your own legal career for lawyers that are doing this. Like, that you got your law degree, you passed the bar, and you were ready to go. Well, no, that was just the first. It was an important step, but that was just the first step in you becoming, the expert that you are in whatever field that you're in. You had to go and, get some nicks and bruises and learn some things, about your craft. And I think most attorneys will recognize, just being out of the box as a lawyer is not enough. You really got to spend the time. And the same is true for a book, and it will yield the results. I will tell you, if you stick with it, you keep promoting it, you keep talking about it, you keep using it on your website. My book is now 7 years old, going on 8, and it's still yielding results. And if anything, it's only gotten better year after year. It literally is like the snowball rolling down the hill. And the longer you go with it, the faster it goes, and with a little effort on your part. So if you can put that effort in the beginning and stick with it, it will yield results. But you do have to have some level of patience about it.
And investing in people. Do you feel like if you would have written your book and self-promoted it, or maybe didn't hire someone that didn't have proof of concept in regards to the PR agency person that you hired, do you feel like that contributed to much of the success for the speaking and multiplier opportunities?
Oh, yeah. I think you got to be, obviously you don't want to spend stupid money, but you got to be prepared to spend on it. You have to go back and look at what I put. This is not just in my time, but I think I was easily, by the time I hired the writers, the proofreaders, and I hired the writer to kind of help me give us some structure, and then the PR person, probably just that first, getting it out. And I'm not even talking about the lifetime of the book. So I kept the PR person on. Allison Beckwith is her name. She's fantastic, for years. But I would say that first 6 months, I probably spent $20,000, maybe more. But it was worth, it was the return on investment has been a multiple of that. But there's no question, it would not have happened. I would not have experienced that same level of success if I had not invested those resources into it. I'm not saying that everybody has to spend that amount of money, but if you're going to do it, don't be shy about, just like people hire you for your expertise, hire people for their expertise in getting this done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And I'd love to put Allison's name in the show notes, in addition to Lee Rosen, because Tom spoke of his coach, Lee Rosen. And if many of you are not familiar with the Rosen Institute, phenomenal. I think it really is important to have someone who understands your space, understands your clients. And the Rosen Institute has worked with more than 500 law firms, help them up level their law firms. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. And to your point, even just having your book on your website and making you look, you're branded, you're absolutely an industry expert right off the bat when you go to your homepage. And I'll put in the show notes a copy of Tom's book in addition to access to his website. I highly recommend that you go out there and check it out, because it is absolutely stunning and beautiful. And I just love how everything is centered around the cover of your book, the coloring and the branding. And it absolutely makes you look like, and you are an industry expert.
No, thank you so much, Molly. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All your good work. I been following the work. I've worked with you before, but obviously following your work on Facebook, and it's all gold. It's all good stuff.
Oh, great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So in closing, what would you say to our attorney listeners that are either in the process of writing a book, have considered writing a book, and you've given us so many value bombs right now, but what would you say was your biggest, I'm going to use the word joy and fulfillment through this process? If you could give kind of one takeaway, it doesn't necessarily have to be about sales, revenues, opportunities that came out of it, but what would you say would be one of your greatest takeaways from going through this process, either 7-8 years ago or even today, that you're finally realizing that's supporting you with maybe owning yourself as an industry expert in regards to credibility, confidence, any of those kind of things that are difficult to measure?
Yeah, well, gosh, there's so many. It's hard to pick one. I mean, I think I'm going to cheat a little bit, do two. I mean, once you see that first article where, somebody on whatever level of press, right, that writes about you, I mean, where they say, attorney, Tom Spiggle, author of, I mean, that's a pretty sweet feeling. But I would also say, the first time you have somebody walk into your office who you've never met before, carrying a copy of your book. I mean, that is that's a tough one to beat.
Wow. You see all your hard work. And like you say, you might think that 200 pages, you didn't have to go that big or that long, but I would venture to guess that even when you said that, having someone walk in that you've never met before, carrying your book, and when you can hear them cite different stories or different pieces within your book that they've read, you're like, wow, every word matters. I love what you said. You're not writing for a million people. You're writing for one person.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, this has been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your process with us. And I'm going to put in the show notes all the links that we discussed in regards to Rosen Institute, in regards to Tom's PR team, in regards to his website. And absolutely, I cannot say enough. Go to his website. You can order a copy of his book and purchase it on Amazon. And for anyone who has been thinking about going through the process, I would highly, highly recommend that you do read Tom's book, to use it as a footprint and a launch pad for you really being able to be excited and empowered and have the confidence to begin on this journey. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, I appreciate it. You take care.
Okay, great. All right, that's another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. Until next time, be well.